Chapter 29, a mini mob convention. Heading south on the bus toward Los Angeles, it was a mini mob convention. They had been called down for the RICO trial, but all of them knew that they were there to take advantage of the system by having meetings and communicating face to face with one another. Boxer has a favorite line from the movie American Me. The main character, played by Edward James Olmos, says, "The state was so lame, it paid for the game." That's not just true in the movies. Locked up at Pelican Bay, carnales could be on the same corridor or cell block and never see each other at all for months or even years. The only inmates who have daily access to each other are those 7 or 8 who live in the same pod, said Boxer. And they might not even be mafioso. So 14 brothers traveling on the same bus for a couple days was big. Besides Boxer and Enriquez, there were many other members of La M on the bus, all of them leg and race chained. There were cages in the front and back of the bus with a heavily armed officer inside each one of them. Inmates were allowed to walk around, but the guards gave a warning at the outset that they had a green light to shoot. Talking was allowed, but inmates were expected to keep the noise level down. There were police chase cars, also equipped with shooters ahead and behind. This is a footnote that's at the bottom of the page. Besides Renee, the inmates on the bus were Richard Psycho Aguirre of Avenues, David Chino Delegadillo of Garrity Lomas, Henry Indio Carlos of El Sereno, Victor Psycho Gallegos of Santa Monica, George Güero Caballo Gonzalez of 18th, Jose Joker Gonzalez of Big Hazard, Julio Lalo Martinez of Lomas, Jose Bat Marquez of San Diego, Jaco Padilla of Azusa 13, Daniel Danny Boy Pina of Big Hazard, Gilbert Little Mo Ruiz of White Fence, Jimmy Smokey Sanchez of VNE, and Albert Bruiser Tolento of Avenues. The bus traveled from Pelican Bay to Folsom, where there was a layover for the night. It went on to Corcoran State Prison the next day before reaching the ultimate destination of West Valley Detention Center in San Bernardino, where they would be housed during their 3-week stay from March 21st to April 10th, 1997. Boxer recalled there were some white and black inmates on the bus as well, and a few Norteños, so every time the bus stopped, the Mafia contingent would quickly walk to the back and talk secretly. Coincidentally, the Maxim Road murder trial of the 2 La Sangra gangsters who shot and killed 2 children and their mother, along with Mafia dropouts Tito Aguirre and Dito Moreno, had ended with convictions 3 months earlier. The 2 murderers were scheduled for sentencing in June 1997. It had been roughly a year and a half since the killings, and carnales were still talking about the stigma of baby shooting left on the Mexican Mafia. There was a quick consensus and a unanimous vote on the bus ride that the people responsible for the baby murders had to go. It was this conversation that sealed Jimmy Character Palmas' execution. Word was sent to Mafia contacts at San Quentin, and it was done. The prevailing feeling was that Pelon Maciel should die too. That debate dovetailed into other serious business. There was a strong sense that too many carnales during the 1990s growth period had been made for the wrong reasons, money being one. The selection process was corrupted from within, and with the rush to infiltrate the street gangs, collect taxes, and extend power on the streets, candidates were not being screened as thoroughly as possible. A small share of Mafia members in one prison or several brothers on the streets were inducting a new member without properly consulting others. In theory, one no vote kept a candidate out of La M, and there was a feeling that not every member was getting that option. It's a vetting process, Boxer explained. Traditionally, someone doesn't just come along and hang out with us for a year and then get into the mob. These are, more often than not, camaradas who were raised with us from the neighborhoods, who have been in jail or prison with us, who we've seen under fire engaging in stabbings or murders and other criminal activity over long periods of time. A nominee needs a padrino or a sponsor who brings his name to a large number of brothers for examination to see if somewhere along the line he was branded a coward, a homosexual, or a snitch. It's important to have charisma, magnetism, ferocity, and what's known on the streets as heart. There needs to be a willingness to kill for La M. You have to be a mafioso. Of course, in practice, there was not always the case. For example, Boxer cited China Boy areas from his own Artesia 13 neighborhood. He said he'd never heard of him when Smalion Gallardo made the guy because he had a lucrative drug operation going. And this new member was also cutting into my share of the neighborhood, cutting off a piece of my pie, and I should have been afforded the opportunity to say yes or no, complained Enriquez. Boxer pointed out that Pelon Maciel of El Monte Flores, the shot caller in the Maxim Road murders, had never been Boxer pointed out that Pelon Maciel of El Monte Flores, the shot caller in the Maxim Road murders, had never even been to prison. Highly unusual for a mafia candidate. I'm sure he did things for Wedo Shy, observed Boxer, but nothing in particular for Emmett. While Tupi and Babo were in San Bernardino County Jail waiting their triple and double murder trials, Chano was on the main line working an extortion ring. Chano would grab a weak inmate who had a lot of money, perhaps a lucrative drug dealer, hold him at knife point in their module, and force him to sign over cars, boats, and money to his wife on the outside. They jokingly called it Operation Wild Beast, after the large, not too smart African antelope with an ox-like head and horns that is always easy prey for lions and crocodiles. Chano, insisted Boxer, never even had a stabbing for the mafia, but would always split the wild beast take with Tupi and Babo. Then there was Art Romo, a fake community activist who helped MA veteran Sanya Ojeda organize a shaky gang truce in Orange County. Ojeda made him a carnal, said Boxer, and reaped the profits of Romo's real profession, big-time drug dealer. That is until Romo got caught moving 260 kilos of cocaine with an estimated street value of at least $2 million, and entered into a plea agreement that made him the first to sign a declaration admitting he was a member of a criminal street gang called the Mexican Mafia. That opened the door for district attorneys throughout California to prosecute MA members more vigorously under the Street Terrorism Act. Orange County Deputy DA Jeff Ferguson, who prosecuted the Romo case, called it the first chink in the armor. It exposes them, MA members, to tremendous sentence enhancements that they've never had before, probably the most crucial of which is conviction of being a street gang member is now a strike in California. Romo's admission that there was a Mexican mafia made it possible for the state, with new gang enhancements, to hand out even stiffer prison sentences than the feds in some instances. It also allowed for a greater restriction on MA parolees and probationers. Romo settled for 20 years. In short, it was felt that some MA members were making new carnales with an eye to feathering their own beds, not taking care of the growth of the Mexican mafia as a whole. Along with that attitude, there seemed to be a philosophy emerging among brothers on the outside, both new and old, that they ran the streets and that those in prison should only run the prisons. They were righteously stealing the profits and territories of the Mexican Mafia brothers in Pelican Bay, vented Boxer. So the mini-mob convention voted to impose a moratorium on new memberships, and it was enforced for the next 5 years or so. The books were closed in California. During that period, the only new members who were recognized were those made by brothers in the federal prison system. Another murder plot was also developed during the RICO trial stay at West Valley Detention Center. Defense attorney Ellen Berry gave Boxer legal folders full of wiretap and videotape transcripts to examine. Perhaps she hoped he might find something that would discredit the prosecution or help the defense. Boxer asked for the information because he had his own ideas. The transcripts were a good way to monitor the pulse of the Mexican Mafia. I wanted to know what was going on, what the brothers were talking about, especially if that included talking shit about me. It was all about preparing myself to meet other carnales in the political arena. In the documents he read that Chino Delegadillo was taped calling Richie Psycho Aguirre a rat. That's a serious politicking violation under Mafia reglas. Unfortunately for Chino, he came down on the bus, and so did Psycho, and both were scheduled for the return pickup back to Pelican Bay. We like Aguirre, Boxer noted. We think he is a sociable guy, so he was told what Chino said about him. Now it was open season on Delegadillo, who was a kind of an unpopular politicker anyway. You know, we're going to take care of this, Boxer told Aguirre. He called you a rat. It's fair to say that Chino probably felt the negative vibes reverberating around him. Meanwhile, others for now were playing him off, including Boxer. It's difficult sometimes when you look at a guy in the face day to day and tell him, hey, how you doing? Hang out with him, make him feel at ease, but you're going to kill him at the end of the next day. Boxer carried a knife and a handcuff key, but it was decided that they would also strangle Chino on the bus back to Pelican Bay. The plan was first to remove the cuffs. Then, from the seat behind Chino, one carnal would apply the hammer lock, a strangulation maneuver that requires the killer to lock his forearm across the victim's windpipe and cut off his ability to breathe. A second carnal would simultaneously stab him. A third was assigned to head off the cops in the aisle of the bus. They figured that on the first leg of the trip from San Bernardino to Lancaster State Prison, sheriff deputies on the bus would only be armed with mace and batons. Again, explained Boxer, it's a statement. The Mafia wants people to know we do these blatant hits out in the open. We do it with impunity, and every act of violence causes terror, which translates into finances because we get our way when people fear us. There was a hitch. Everyone was split up and transported in smaller vans. The cops changed the type of handcuffs normally used and covered the inmates' heads with hoods. SSU agents picked them up in some other vans at Lancaster and drove them to Corcoran State Prison SHU. There was still one more chance to get Chino. A bus was dispatched to take all of them to the final destination at Pelican Bay. Sitting in the back, Boxer's hands were already shaking from the building adrenaline rush that preceded a fatal attack. It's your call, he told Gary. We're ready to take Chino out. We do it now or he gets a pass. In the meantime, as the bus passed through Mendocino County, Delgadillo denied he ever said anything that indicated Gary was a rat. He even apologized if there was some kind of misunderstanding. Psycho Gary had full support from all the mafiosi on the bus. He had been called a rat and the green light was on Chino, but in the end he decided to give him a pass. Other carnales, looking at each other sideways, saw it as an act of cowardice. Boxer observed Gary was a diminished person in their eyes. In the conscientious world, he did the right thing. No decent, intelligent person actually kills someone over a verbal accusation or insult. Normal people may exchange some harsh words, work out their differences, or just ignore the insult and move on with their lives. This was not that world. The mob world is diabolically different. It's a world where people can die over the slightest sign of disrespect. On this same bus trip, Boxer was approached by another carnal, Jose Bat Marquez, who had plans to escape across the border and make their wicked world bigger and more profitable than ever.